So in this video we're going to be taking a look at creating a procedural stairs simulation using one cube and one plane. We can create all of this with some simple geometry. So without further ado, let's get started. And before I start the video, I just want to ask if you could take the time to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to have more content coming in the next few weeks here. And also check out my Patreon. I have some exclusive blend files there from all my products. And I'd appreciate it if you check that out. That really helps out the channel. First of all, we're going to start by adding a default cube. I'm going to press grab Z1, move it up on the x-axis, go into edit mode. I'm going to select these two faces. Control I, invert the selection. X, delete the faces. Back into edit mode. Now we're going to add a bevel. We're going to change the profile to custom and change the preset to steps. Now you won't see any difference right now because you have to change the amount. I'm going to change the amount to, it's around 1.75 is the perfect amount. Now we just keep adding segments until we have the minimum amount of steps that we want, 16. And what we're also going to do, we're going to go down to auto smooth, make sure that's turned on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in an array modifier, leave that at 1 for the x. We're going to change this count to, let's say, 5. And if you go into wireframe mode, you can see these lines here because it instantiated each instance together. You click merge, make sure it's around 0.01, there'll be left vertices. That helps to optimize the scene because we don't need those vertices in any way. Then what we'll do is we'll add in a second array. This time we'll set this to 0. We'll set the y to 1 and the z to 1. And you can see that now we have a stairwell. Well, we're going to add the merge. If you look at the bottom there, that removes a few faces. It helps for optimizing the scene. So for the values, I go for a value of 5 on x and a value of 8 on the y and z. It gives us a tall staircase. We're going to add in a solidify modifier. Now if you go to the side view, I'm going to increase this to 0.1. Now if you look, it doesn't look very even. So I'm going to turn on even thickness. Now that's perfectly even. That will help out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to a new collection called stairs. And I'm going to press F2 and rename the object to stair. I'm going to go to my shading tab. I'm going to select the object. Make sure I'm on object shading. I'm going to create a new material called, you guessed it, stair. And I'm going to add in a color ramp as well as an object info node. What the object info node is doing is I'm taking the random input, so there's going to be multiple objects, so it's taking a random value, assigning it through this color ramp between 0 and 1, and that is going to determine our color. I'm going to set our roughness all the way to 1. I didn't find shininess look very good on this model. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to constant. We want constant colors. I'm going to add 2 more total. So here I picked 4 colors that I thought looked really nice. Position at 0, 0.25, 0.5, and 0.75. So they're all equal distribution. I'll show you the color value here if you want to pause the video and record each color. Although I do recommend experimenting with your own colors because your scene may differ from mine. So now that that's done, I'll come over to the default tab. I'll switch to material preview and wait for everything to compile. Now if I press Shift P, you can see it'll choose my different colors at random. Actually, what I want to do is have 4 variants. So I'll move this aside, move this aside, move this aside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change these values here in the array to have 4 different values. So here you can see that I chose different values for all 4 of them. Now you can make as many different variations as well as many different sizes as you like. I encourage you to experiment and create your own. So now I'm going to go and add in a plane. So I'm going to make sure my dimensions are open and scale it to 128 meters. Apply the scale. Also make sure all of these have applied scale as well. Go in edit mode, select 2 on the numpad, and select edge mode, extrude, grab Z, just throw that up there. We're going to go to our modifiers, add in a bevel, set that to say 3, just increase the amount. We're also going to go over to auto smooth, and we are going to crank that up a little bit, shade smooth, and that's all we need for this. Okay, so in the shader editor I'm going to add in a material, call this ground. I'm going to select a color around a soft blue, and then I'm going to throw in a noise texture. Let's get to scale around 30, max out the detail to 16, and add in a color ramp. And put the factor to the roughness. Now I'm going to increase this value here to about 0.245, and I'm just going to increase this value here to, let's see, around 0.033. Now the reason I'm doing this, I'll show you. I go into material preview. You can see that I have noise applied. I throw that through the color ramp to define the roughness. In the color ramp itself, here you can see how the roughness looks really nice in our scene. We're going to go back to our default view. We're going to add in another cube. Let's just scale this up. Go to the top view, grab Z, pull that up there. Now we don't need it to be this big, so we'll go into edit mode, select the top face, scale it down. Now at this point we should put in a camera so we can define where our particle system is to save some memory and not have so many objects on the screen. So what I'll do is I'll come to the front view, I'll add in a camera, Control Alt 0 to align it to view, grab Z, draw it down, press GZZ twice to move it up. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get it just on the ground here as low as we can, and let's angle it up just a little bit. Now what we can do to optimize space is we can move our plane down, and we can also move this down as well so it's just above our camera. What I'll do is I'll make sure that the scale is applied to this cube. I will also make sure that I set the origin to the geometry, and I will go to the particles tab, and the particle system, I won't bother naming it because it's the only one in the scene. Change the emitter to hair and hit advanced. I'll set the number to around 1500. I will set the segments down to 2 because it's not hair, it's just objects. Play around with the seed. And now under source, from faces you want it to be volume, so you want it to be inside the mesh. I have it jittered, and check random order and even distribution because I want it to be very random and chaotic. Now I'll click on enable rotation. We'll change this to our global Z, so it's rotating around the Z axis. I will leave the phase at 0, put the randomize to 2. I'll go under the render tab, change from render's path to collection. I'll change the scale to 0.03 and the randomness to 0.5, so it's not too big, not too small. To actually see that, I'm going to select our stair collection. I'm going to go up and hide the actual stair collection up here. If you go to the camera, you can see we have all these stairs. What I want to do is uncheck show emitter, so we just see the stairs here. And under render you also want to uncheck show emitter. Now these might look small right now, but we're actually going to optimize the scene. So we're going to select this cube here. We're going to select this edge, grab X, move it in, grab this edge, grab X to move it in. The reason we're doing that is we're trying to optimize the scene, have as many particles in the view as possible. We'll grab this top edge, grab Z, and this other edge we'll leave it. We'll grab this, move it on X as well, kind of line it up. Now if you look, you kind of have a projection shape similar to the camera. Now you want to move this back so that it's not intersecting with the wall. Around there is fine. Upon exiting edit mode, you have all these stairs here in a crazy configuration. You can of course change the scale, the randomness of the scale, the randomness of the rotation, the number of particles of course, and the seed, where they all are. Now let's just leave it like this for now. Now if I go into material preview, you should see that each one has a different material. However, the lighting does look a little flat, leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm going to fix that right now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in a light, sun, right, 90, and the default strength should be strong enough. We go into material preview, you can see here that this looks fairly neat. You can of course increase the size, increase the scale, the randomness, everything like that to get the desired look. Before we do a test render, we might as well composite the image. I'm going to head over to the Compositor tab. Here I have my render layer hooked into a denoise, the image into image, denoising normal into normal, denoising albedo into albedo. I have this into a color balance that is set to offset power slope, which is great for working with photorealistic color spaces. Have this on the default settings. I can change after the render goes through. Then I have a glare, always nice to have a fog glow. I set it to the highest quality. Threshold, I change that down to 0.4 and I increase the size to 9, which is the maximum. And then every lens in the real world has some distortion. So I change the dispersion value to 0.005, just a very small amount, and that's going to go to my viewer and the composite. For my render settings, sRGB is the filament color space. I'm a sucker for some very high contrast, and change the exposure. Change the exposure to 0.289. Gamma, I left that at 1. Samples, 256 is fine for what we're doing. And you want to enable adaptive sampling that actually can speed up the render. I don't use this denoising because I find that the Intel denoiser in the compositor is a lot better. Some basic light paths. You can render it as transparent if you like. I use auto italicize and set it to the highest. I've done some extreme testing and found this is the best for GPU rendering. I am using two 980 Ti's. And then I'm going to render at 1440p. I'm going to save it as a TIFF image in RGBA format, 16 bits, and no compression. And I'm going to save this so I can edit this in Photoshop with no color banding or artifacts. So here you can see my scene rendered out in just over 2.5 minutes. Use less than 200 megabytes of RAM since there's basically no textures besides the HDRI, which you can use any HDRI to get the light you want. You go to the compositing, you're free to change the color however you'd like, of course, as well. And you can always play around with some color grading if you really want to get that in depth with the scene. So there you've had it, you made it to the end of the tutorial. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, leave a comment letting me know if you have any other video suggestions. I of course appreciate if you subscribe as well, that way you can see further videos from me. And check out the Patreon, I'm having some exclusive posts on there. I have some scene files, all of the scenes that I do, I upload the scene files to Patreon and you can check that all out. So thanks for tuning in.